There we go. All right, we're on air. It is Thursday, March 3rd. Thank you, everybody, for joining our call today. We're going to do a quick rundown through our agenda for the Backdrop developer check-in meeting. Starting off, let's see, we've got a couple of general announcements. If you would like to make a donation to Backdrop CMS, you can do that on our Contribute page. We sent out a thank you gift of a t-shirt for a $25 donation or a hoodie for a $50 donation. We've got 3 items getting shipped out today, so if you made a donation recently, those should be on the way. Should be great. Also, if you are a Backdrop Contrib developer, which means you have joined the Contrib group and set your your status on that group to public so that the PHP Storm folks can find you there, then you can have a PHP Storm license. So if you send an email to info@backdropcms.org, we can send that out to you. Let's see, updates from the Project Management Committee. We are hoping to expand the Project Management Committee in the next few weeks, and we have kind of outlined our general representatives, I suppose, or constituents we'd like to have represented. We're looking for somebody who owns or manages a web development company, and that would be a web development company of more than one person. It doesn't have to be a huge company, definitely more than one person. That way we can have kind of a business perspective on decisions we're making for Backdrop the software. We want to have somebody who's not a coder, but is a very active site builder, so somebody who clicks together a lot of sites but maybe doesn't write a lot of code. We want to have somebody with HTML, CSS, and JavaScript experience to have kind of a front-end expert to make sure that we are making decisions that are in line with what the front-end developer communities want. And we'd like to have somebody who's really familiar with a lot of contributed modules, so familiar with the APIs that are in core, so that if we're promoting doing something really crazy with the APIs, that person can say, whoa, 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 like 90 of my contrib modules will break if you do that. Just so that we have an idea of representation from all of these people in terms of decisions we're making for the future of the software and for the future of the Backdrop community. So we have people in mind for some of these positions already, but there are always opportunities to get more people on board. I'm not sure we have an official process for how to add people to the BMC, like if we should have some kind of an election cycle or something, like long term. I think initially we don't have anyone to vote off the island yet. Who knows? Somebody may decide to vote me off the island. But I think like once we get people added, we should try and figure out like what our process is going to be for maintaining that group, so that if somebody needs to leave or somebody does want to get voted off, we have a process for filling that spot. I don't know if you have any thoughts about that already, Nate or Mike, but we can definitely figure that out as we start to grow.
We might have like rotating like 2-year commitments or something like that, and then like forcible breaks, and then someone can get elected after like a year break or something like that. But just to keep things being diverse.
Yeah. Some kind of re-election or timeline on things that I think is a great idea. Or for new members, like trials. You know, like we're gonna say, you know, let you
trials of fitness and strength. Okay, I will best you wrestling, Nate.
And just to lower the level of commitment from people, like, you know, if you say you're joining the PMC will be for the rest of your life versus, you know, for the next year, and then we'll come back and evaluate that again a year from now, then that's less pressure on people as well. So it's good in all situations, I think.
Yeah, we do that for a nonprofit that I'm working on right now, where everybody gets a 2-year term, but it's saying there's also written in that like if you need to get off sooner, you can. You just say like help get me off or whatever, and so there's an out even before that 2-year period of time. But we don't have to reelect every year. We can reelect every 2 years, and then at the end of the 2 years, if you want to remain on, that's also an option. So it's like you can opt yourself back in, and then if we need to fill someone, we can hold an election. And that kind of decreases the amount of like administration associated with managing the group to say like, do you want on, do you want off? If you need off, we'll let you off. But obviously we'd love to have people want to be on there for life, but we don't want to commit you for life from the first day. Okay, great ideas. All right, Nate, do you want to take over the community growth section?
Sure. Okay, so it's been 2 weeks since our last. Actually, I heard there was a rogue meeting, not really rogue, but leaderless meeting last week because Jen and I Jen and I were not around. We were at Sand Camp last week, so there was no official meeting last week. But that means that all of these statistics are double what they normally are because because it's been 2 weeks since our last meeting. So okay. So total projects for backdropcms.org, including layouts, themes, and modules, 222 modules, themes, and layouts now in the Backdrop Contrib group on GitHub. That's 9 new projects since last meeting, which is fantastic. There's 150 total projects with official releases that have been published on backdropcms.org. That's 6 new projects on backdropcms.org since last meeting. Obviously there's a gap there between total contrib projects and the ones that are published on backdropcms.org. If you haven't made an official release of your module or theme or layout, then it won't show up on backdropcms.org. But after the first official release has been published on GitHub by cutting a tag and then making it a release item on GitHub, then it publishes on backdropcms.org. On backdropcms.org, there's also 201 releases of those projects, and that's 9 new releases since last meeting, one of which is a new core release since last meeting. We released 1.3.3 just, let's see, that was February 24th, which included some security fixes and was coordinated with the Drupal.org team. So all very exciting. Let's see. Oh yes, Contrib authors. We have 48 total Contrib authors. There have been 2 new applications that have been open in the past couple of days that are looking really good. So it'll be great to welcome in those new members probably this week. And we have 110 accounts on backdropcms.org, including 5 new ones. We haven't publicized it real heavily, but you can create an account on backdropcms.org if you have not already. Right now, just about the only thing you can do is configure your profile page, but in the near future, there will be more integration in between backdropcms.org and GitHub and publishing things. There'll be a lot more things that you can do on backdropcms.org. So go ahead and reserve your low user IDs now if you're interested, and you can do so by visiting backdropcms.org/user. All right, that's it for community growth. We can roll right into infrastructure tasks, things that are around the Backdrop software that help support the project. We've got a couple of items on here that are the usual suspects, and there's been some modest progress in some of these, but I think a lot of these are the same things we've been talking about for the last several weeks or even months, actually. Usage statistics. We've had usage statistics for a really long time. That's update module checking into backdropcms.org. We haven't gotten the numbers of how many sites that are out there calculating properly. We have all the code ready. We just need to review it and get it merged onto the site. So that's been pending review for quite a while now. But hopefully in the near future we'll get that merged and get those usage statistics up on backdropcms.org. Separate from the bugs that we've been having, we also want to add new capabilities to update module to make it so that it can check in and tell backdropcms.org about certain features that are enabled on your site rather than just which projects are in use. So there's an issue for that in the backdropcms.org issue queue, issue 99. If you're interested in working to improve both project module on backdropcms.org and update module in core, it requires some effort on both sides in order to make a feature like that happen. Next item on the infrastructure list is Drush for Backdrop. We've been working to make Drush compatible with Backdrop for a while now. There's now a copy of a Drush extension in the contrib group, which works to some degree. What you do is you download the latest version of Drush, Drush 8, and then drop the backdrop extension into either the Drush 8 directory or into your profile directories .drush folder. And that makes it so that Drush will recognize backdrop and be able to do a basic set of commands, drush updb, drushdl now, thanks Jeff for that, drush cron, all of those commands will work on backdrop. But we've had some issues that right now if you install the Drush extension, it can break Drush on Drupal 7 sites, which is a big issue. So we're trying to figure out why that is. This past week at SandCamp, actually, Greg Anderson, who's one of the maintainers of Drush, had been working with myself to try to figure out why that was happening. And we've got some new ideas to implement that should help Backdrop and Drush integrate well together or better together. So we'll be working on that in the next couple of days. It's still nice that Greg has been super responsive and helpful towards supporting Drush for Backdrop. So we have that resource available to us, and thank you very much for doing that. Let's see. We also have an item on here. We talked with also with Greg, and I think. Did we talk with Matt about this too? That we'd like to make it so that Pantheon better supports Backdrop. Once we get this Drush integration working, and once Pantheon can run updb through Drush, then it makes it so that possibly we can get Backdrop listed on the list of projects, officially supported projects for Pantheon. Because right now, even though Pantheon supports Backdrop, there's some user interface glitches, basically, that Pantheon says that it can run update.php, but then it actually doesn't. And we need to get that fixed before Pantheon lists Backdrop as a piece of officially supported software when you spin up a new instance.
Did you see that issue that I just pasted in there?
I'm taking a look. Backdrop Drush on Pantheon. Awesome. Opened 21 hours ago. Oh, nice.
Do you think he's suggesting that we put a Drush install in the Backdrop Git group? Do you think that's what he's suggesting?
Add Drush to code/Drush.
I think he just wants us to put the commands in a Drush directory inside core.
Oh, I think what he's saying, not just inside core. I mean, we could do that, but we have a separate upstream repository that we manage for Pantheon, and I think he's saying that if we include Drush, like he's saying, or the Drush extension in the upstream repository for Pantheon, then Pantheon could start supporting Drush immediately, because it would use our copy of Drush with the Backdrop extension rather than the installation that is on Pantheon. So that's really cool. We'll have to give that a shot. That could really accelerate Pantheon's support for Backdrop if we can ship our Drush extension in our upstream repository. And that upstream repository is not Backdrop core. We have a separate repository that's just for Pantheon, which would be a combination of core plus Drush. Yeah, that might be really cool. Yeah, I love it that he's like, might work, give it a shot.
Could we test that on like if I do that on just a Backdrop installation on Pantheon, it should work the same way, right? And then I can report back that worked. Well, I can try it.
Yeah, actually, yes, exactly. That we could do that just without, just on any old Pantheon site. Just throw in Backdrop or throw in the Drush extension and Drush into looks like into code/drush. Yeah. And then Pantheon will pick it up. So that's worth giving it a shot. Pretty neat. Okay, let's see. Other items that we have in infrastructure, we have a number of things that we would like to automate between backdropcms.org and GitHub. There's a whole tag for that in the backdropcms.org issue queue. We won't go through each of them, but if you're interested in playing around with the GitHub API and working on backdropcms.org, we could use some assistance setting up more automation to streamline our processes on GitHub. All right, backdropcms.org. We've got a number of items that we're looking to improve on backdropcms.org itself. Jen, I usually turn it over to you at this point if you would like to pick it up.
Sure. So yeah, we've got a couple of follow-up issues related to allowing people to have user profile pages. One of those is just letting them edit the pages, which we're working on. I'll try and get that merged in today. Edit their pages in the front-end theme. We also want to allow single sign-on with GitHub. So if somebody is already a GitHub user and they come to join the Backdrop community, they don't necessarily need to spend a bunch of time creating a profile on the Backdrop site. They can just click single sign-on, and then it'll pull all of the relevant information over. That, I don't know how soon is going to happen, but I think it would be something that would be really beneficial for us, getting people who have GitHub accounts and are contributors to Backdrop on the backdropcms.org site faster. There's a couple of other things we want to add onto backdropcms.org. The event calendar I actually set up last week or the week before, so that anybody who has a backdropcms.org account and wants to post an event that they're managing or attending on the website, they can. I would just say if it's not you managing the event, make sure you run it by the event organizers, that they're cool with it being promoted on Backdrop's site. But this right now roughly matches the Google Calendar feed that we have, the iCal feed that's available for Backdrop events. Eventually, I'm hoping to get rid of the Google Calendar feed, and we can set up an iCal feed directly from the Backdrop website. But since that's brand new, we don't have things like location on there yet. Right now we've got 2 of them, but at least people can add their own events, which I thought was a good step. So you can do something with your Backdrop account now. The first thing people can actually do, logging into the Backdrop site, they can add an event, which is good. We also are planning on setting up a showcase for sites built with Backdrop. I think that's our next high priority item, because it's getting harder to sell Backdrop sites without examples of Backdrop sites. So I'm going to be compiling a list of all of the information we want to collect about each site in the showcase, based on WordPress Showcase, Drupal Showcase. I think there's a couple other sites in that issue that people have recommended that they thought were a good set of source data to look at. So we'll be building that up and then turning that over to Darius to do a design for our showcase site, showcase of sites. We also want to put up a service provider contractor listing, and that's probably also something that's going to get done before the showcase gets built, because it might not need an initial design. We can do a design review after the fact, and that'll just be so that anybody who is a service provider can post that they are a service provider on the website, and then people are looking for help building a Backdrop site. They want to hire a developer, designer, hosting provider. They can go to that page and find them. And that'll be initially modeled off of the service provider listing on Drupal.org as well. We can modify as needed. And then, of course, the jobs board, something that's been really successful for Drupal. Long term, we'll make one of those for Backdrop. Also, right now, but it's lower priority. We do have a couple of things that we have recently added to the Backdrop website that need a little improvement. Our Find Modules, Themes, and Layouts pages have a big chunk of follow-up issues that need some development, just to make sure that we get all of the information that's in our designs made available on the website. We've got some technical issues like getting views integration working and getting our usage statistics accruing correctly, but we will eventually get that done. And then we have a design for the themes page that's different from the designs for the module page that hasn't been implemented yet. We'll get that done too. once we get all of our technical implementation details on pulling in the information we need wrapped up. Then we just have a couple of design review issues as well, like getting our news section sorted out. There's also been a couple of requests to call it a blog. I think that kind of makes sense. We've got stuff in there that isn't really news, but there's also stuff in there that isn't really bloggy, so I don't know if anyone has a better name for what we should call that section of the site. Naming things is hard, so it's kind of done, but can use improvement. Same thing with the event calendar. That's brand new. It's going to need a design review. It's currently under news because events are time-related, but I don't know. We could reorganize that section too if someone has some good ideas about how to clean that up. Speaking of news, we are planning on writing up a blog post on benchmarks of Backdrop versus Drupal 7, also PHP 5 versus PHP 7, which would be kind of interesting. We also are planning on doing a blog post that's a wrap-up of SandCamp, where we did our first full-day Backdrop training last week, which I thought went really well. And so, Nate, if you need time to get your benchmarking done, I can do the wrap-up on SandCamp post first. And then I know we have a couple of other people who are interested in doing blog posts as well. We have a meta issue 158 that talks about scheduling for posts. I think, Mike, I don't know what your timeline is for doing a config management post, but whenever you want to get that up, we can get that on the schedule too. I know Doug Van also wanted to do one on Calabox and Backdrop. They were also, some people came to our Backdrop training last Thursday with a local instance of Backdrop set up and running in Calabox because they went to the Calabox training the day before, which was fantastic. They're like, can I use this version that was set up on Calabox? So that was great. It would be great to get more kind of publicity on how easy those things are to get running together. So we'll have Doug Van do that one, and then we also will have an upcoming post at some point about Backdrop and Civi CRM working together. We got to get those working together, and I'd like to set up Backdrop itself to use Civi, and then we can have kind of a use case, showcase, case study, like what is that word, on how we got it working and what we're doing with it. So hopefully that'll come soon as well. Anyone else has any ideas for blog posts, you can add a comment to that issue and we'll stick you on the schedule. Yeah, but definitely the more people who have information to share, I think getting everybody to post things up there is good. There was also some discussion about just kind of opening up so that anybody can write a blog post and just have them only go to the front of the news blog section when they're promoted. Like we could just kind of pick and choose and be like, oh, this is a great one, and we'll just put it over there. But we need to figure out where those posts would go if they're not promoted to the news section. Like the way it's set up right now, they would just disappear right when someone created it. So I think, Mike, it was you that recommended, like, on their profile page, we could have everybody have their own posts. But that would kind of turn backdropcms.org into, like, a massive blog site. So people will be like, oh, need a blog? Sign up at backdropcms.org, and you can write your own blog posts. And that's kind of an interesting idea. Like, I had never thought of that before. Not really sure we want to support that, but I'm, like, drawn to the idea, so I don't know if you guys have any strong feelings about that, but it's definitely something we can think about and try and figure out if we want to encourage that kind of behavior or not. We get a lot of feature requests. They might be a really good view into the kinds of things people want to do on blog sites, and maybe that would inform our decisions on what to do in core, but also might end up with us adding like a gazillion contrib modules to backdropcms.org and then making it hard to maintain. I'm conflicted. They're both good ideas. Okay, anyway, speaking of news, we also need to send a newsletter. We've been really bad about getting newsletters out. We need to send one that talks about Backdrop 1.3 being out, and there's a bunch of other stuff we could lump in there as well. I guess maybe I'll draft one of those in Google Docs and post a link in our newsletters meta issue and see if anyone wants to review that. But we should try and get one out pretty soon. Nate also did a webinar recently. It is now, there's a link in the agenda. I can throw it into the meeting too. YouTube video It was a layouts deep dive. I did kind of a short overview on why Backdrop, and then did a deep dive into layouts. I think it went pretty well. Nate, I don't know if you want to give an update on that. No.
Yeah, sorry, mute.
Yes.
Yeah, so 1.3.3, great to have that out. That got us up to feature parity with, or port parity with Drupal 7.42, which was fantastic. And we coordinated the release of 1.3.3 with 7.43, which was a security release of Drupal 7. So now we are fully up to date patch-wise with the latest releases of Drupal 7, which is great to maintain and make sure that we have all of those fixes that are happening in Drupal are also in Backdrop. And yeah, the next release 1.3.4 is as needed. There are a couple of issues that are tagged for 1.3.4 that are rather important to actually. We've kind of figured out. We had this intermittent issue, or people have been experiencing this intermittent issue, and we've seen it on backdropcms.org itself, where the sidebars or the blocks can seem to disappear under certain conditions, and then you clear the caches, and then everything's fine again. And we've figured out the root cause of that, and it's actually not as random as it may seem at all, and it could happen quite frequently. So we have an issue and a solution to fix that problem, and that might make 1.3.4 come out more quickly than some of the other releases, just because it's such a, it's a big site-breaking bug when that occurs. So we have a solution. I think once we have it solved, we'll probably see another bug fix release in the near future. Do you want me to go right into 1.3.4 or into 1.4? Oh, I think now you're muted, Jen. But
sorry,
I can see that you mouthed the word sure. Okay. Okay. So 1.4.0, the next minor release of Backdrop is due or scheduled for May 15th. And there's a number of items here. Fixing the rich text editor is a little bit of a vague thing, but there's a bunch of follow-ups to fixing up CK Editor and its integration into Backdrop. We actually had one of those things come out in the last bug fix release. 1.3.3 solves one of the problems with uploading images that you don't need to click the upload button anymore. It automatically uploads when you're in the dialog. And all of those things that are bug fixes, we can fix those at any time. It's really that we have some issues for deeper integration that are scheduled for 1.4.0. There's a meta issue for that at 1087, which lists a whole bunch of issues relating to improving the rich text editor. References module, this is probably one of the biggest items and most urgent, and I will add that we need a solution to handle references between different types of content, like node reference fields and user reference fields and things of that sort. And we like the capability and feature set of references module as it exists in Drupal 7, but we are repulsed by the implementation. And so our intention there is that we will do essentially an updated version of references module called reference that will provide all of that same functionality and the same UI and features, but implemented in kind of a less abstract way, and built upon Backdrop's entity API, which we didn't have in Drupal 7. I haven't seen any activity on that. Mike, I know you're kind of taking the lead on it. Do you want to provide any info?
Most of the activity is actually sort of making the issue bigger by getting into all the entity stuff. Basically, we need to do some additions of there's the what is it called, in the entity object. There's a array that matches some basic fields like ID and label to whatever the ID and label is. Like node has, the label is title and the ID is NID. I think in order to get reference to work in a sort of very easy way, we should update all of our existing core entities to have a couple additional fields to make things easier, including just basically like a one for status, which field in your object like is status, because obviously you probably only want to be able to have options to only select entities that are published or users that are active. And yeah, a couple more of those. So, but that isn't breaking the API because we're just adding a couple additional items into that array. So in order to use the reference module, like they would, any entities would have to just have a couple extra fields just to point, or if they want to or not. But if you have like a status field in your entity, you just say status is this field, and like created is this field or author is this field and stuff like that, just to make it easy to filter.
Cool. Is that listed in this meta issue?
No, that isn't listed in the meta issue yet, I don't think. I'm not sure what I have to go back and look at what I documented in particularly. Sort of went down the rabbit hole just collecting what there was there with the entities, and now I'm going to start like adding the stuff that's not.
Okay, yeah. Okay, cool. Let's see. So redirect module, we added path auto and token to previous minor releases of Backdrop, and so in the next release we'd also like to include redirects to make it so that when your aliases, your automatic aliases change, that the old paths are given redirects. And there's a pull request that's coming along very well actually in issue 905. That Jeff has been working on that looks just fantastic. Jeff, do you want to do an update on redirect?
Yeah, it's working as far as I can tell. My manual testing, I updated a lot of the tests, and I can't remember exactly where I stand with that, but I don't think they're all passing, but I think a good chunk of them are passing. And I did an upgrade path. I'll have to keep an eye on the update hooks in case something else gets into system module. And I need to write a change record, or someone does. I'd be willing to do that. I don't have access to the API site though, but I can take the other change records that we've written and write it in the exact same style.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
Testers welcome if somebody wants to pull that down and give it a spin.
Yeah, I gave it a shot and I know that it worked really well. And I gave it a code review and it's looking really good too.
This is a new one since then though, based on all of your code review, but now with redirect as its own module rather than integrated with path.
Oh, excellent, excellent. Yeah, I hadn't seen that. Oh, super. All right, awesome. I know Mike also raised a question about the use of entities for redirects, which I agree is a little bit strange because there's no possible reason, like there's no possible way to like make a redirect fieldable, right? Which is probably the main reason for using entities. And I got to thinking, I was like, well, it is nice that it's a real object and that you can do things like, redirect arrow save and things like that. But we might consider like it might not need to be extending the entity type object, that maybe it can just be a standalone object, which is the same way like blocks, for example. Blocks are objects, but they are not entities. There's nothing wrong with having an object that provides methods that isn't an entity. It just, I think that's what everybody defaulted to in Drupal world, is because it's like, oh, we only have one type of object, so everything must extend it, right? But it would be completely reasonable for us just to have a different type of object, because a redirect is, it's a different situation than a piece of content. So we might look into that just as a way to solve that problem without doing a large amount of rewriting. Yeah. So that's something we might look into. Okay, new front-end theme. Next item on the list. We actually talked about this a whole bunch today. We had an earlier meeting in the design call an hour ago, talking about the new front-end theme. Wes is working on one called Basis, which is looking really exciting. He's not here in this meeting, and we just talked about it an hour ago. So if you're interested in hearing about the new front-end theme, I suggest watching the design call that happened earlier today. The issue for that is issue 1361. Lots of really exciting work going on over there. And then also new core layouts, issue 698. We're thinking about expanding the number of layouts that are in core to go beyond the current like left sidebar, right sidebar, single column situation that we have now. That would allow for more flexibility out of the box when doing site building. That issue, we're kind of going back and forth about whether or not that means the Radix layouts or whether it means a Bootstrap-based set of layouts. But I would suggest just joining in that conversation and providing your input there if you're interested in that. There's also other items for 1.4.0 that are all just tagged for that release or that milestone in GitHub, and a bunch of minor issues there. If you've got changes that you'd like to see implemented in Backdrop, we're always open to new features that aren't particularly on the schedule, but if they make API expansions or new user interfaces, they need to be in the next minor release. API changes not allowed in the 1.x release cycle. Those will need to wait to 2.x, which at this point we don't have a schedule for.
Nate, I know you're busy, but if you get a chance to look at the publish in the future one, which took a strange turn, not a strange turn, but I think it's dangerously close to being API changing now.
Right.
So I would like to see your input on that code.
Okay. Yeah. That is really cool. Like I've been happy to see that issue moving forward. It basically allows scheduling on the node form. Yeah, and that one, yeah, I haven't taken a look at it in the past week, so I will after the call. Cool. Let's see, other items. We also have continuous user improvements that we're trying to do just at any time. Two big ones that may be seen in the next release. We'd like to add Project Browser to core to make it so that you can find and install projects from directly within core. And that has a pull request that is actually working at issue 1399, but may need some work to kind of properly integrate it into Backdrop core. And we also have a lot of amazing mock-ups for making a better field UI in issue 779. There hasn't been any code implementation on that, but there's been a lot of great ideas around making modest improvements to field UI that can be done within the 1.x release cycle, mostly just around improving the way that we add fields and show previews of what those fields are, changing widgets, those sorts of things, reducing the number of steps that are involved in adding fields to a content type or another type of entity. And so that work is really exciting, and it's not particularly huge. Like the amount of work involved there is not massive. It's just iterative improvements that could make a big difference for user experience. Let's talk about sprints. Every Thursday, such as today, we have sprints after the meeting and before the meeting, where you can meet up with us in the GitHub issue queue. GitHub.com/backdrop is where most of our primary communication happens. Although we also have been using Gitter a lot recently. That's an online chat tool, gitter.im/backdrop. And you can join into the channels there and communicate more real-time with Backdrop contributors. We also are in IRC at #backdrop. IRC seems to be fading in popularity, mostly because Gitter seems to be working more effectively, but we're still there in #backdrop. For anyone that has a strong commitment to IRC, you can reach us out there. If you have just general water cooler chat or discussions, you can use Reddit, reddit.com/r/backdrop. Upcoming events, we have an iCal feed of upcoming events that you can get from the weekly agendas. And we also now have an events page on backdropcms.org, which is really exciting. Backdropcms.org/events, just listing upcoming presentations and events that are Backdrop friendly, and you can meet some Backdrop contributors at those events. Could we get the iCal feed on this events page on backdropcms.org? That might be an improvement we can do, because right now the iCal feed is only in this document, but we could get that feed listed on the events page as well to make it so that you can.
It is on, I think, the resources page.
Ah, okay, cool.
That's okay. I can put it here too. Let's see.
Yeah, the last item we've got here on the I want to say Drupal Camp Utah is this weekend. Is that right? Starting tomorrow?
I think so. Yeah.
Wow. And I'm not actually sure. Yes, that there is a session on Backdrop at Drupal Camp Utah. So if you're in the area, Friday or Saturday, tomorrow and day after tomorrow, then you can catch Lullabot's Jared Bittner. He'll be giving a presentation on Backdrop. Very exciting. Okay. Last time on here, books. We're really excited about Todd Tomlinson's book on Backdrop, Migrating from Drupal to Backdrop. It's a short 80-page book just documenting how to migrate or upgrade your Drupal 6 and Drupal 7 websites to Backdrop. It's available from Apress and on Amazon. And we're looking forward to the first full-length Backdrop book, beginning Backdrop, in the second quarter of this year. So lots of really exciting activity there. Let's open the floor to general discussion. Anybody, if you have anything to add or questions you'd like to ask, then now's the time. So Andy poses the question, does anyone have any thoughts on field group module? Some people want a direct port, others want to rewrite to make it simpler. Notice there was an issue for it. Oh boy.
I would love to see it be simplified for Backdrop. And this is something that we're going to run into with a lot of modules from Drupal land, is where the Drupal versions are really complicated, and in a Backdrop world maybe we don't need the same solution as we needed for Drupal. This is something we're working on right now with Drupal Commerce. In Drupal there's Commerce, and in Backdrop we're going to get Backshop, which is going to be a simplified, lighter weight version of the same thing. For something like that, it's pretty clear that we want something different. A lot of these smaller modules, it's going to be less clear. What I'm doing with Flex Slider module, which is an example of a module that has 3 submodules, a project that has 3 submodules, is I'm keeping the version that matches the Drupal version the same, and then I'm incrementing the version on the Backdrop one to consolidate and reduce. So I'm not sure what that means in terms of the amount of work that's required. Like, there's probably a lot less work required to simplify during the port than there is to port it in its complete form and then simplify. But I definitely would say, you know, I don't know, Andy, if you have a use case for using Field Group where you're like, my site only needs these 2 subsets, you could port those 2 subsets and then put something in there that said, like, this is a simplified version, it includes these 2 subsets. And then if somebody else comes along and they need one of the things that you have imported, they could either add that to the module, request to become a co-maintainer, whatever, if you wanted to, or develop a different branch. It'll really depend per module how that should go. I personally would like to see it simplified, because I look at Field Group module now and go, that's way too much. But you see how it got that way. Like, it got that way naturally over time, where everybody's like, oh, what if we did this? What if we did this? And you end up feeling really different. Yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think?
Okay, thanks. I just saw Mike Mr. Hurlday, several others post on it about the request, so I thought I'd bring it up in the meeting.
Yeah, I would say it would probably be best to start simple. And if you only need part of it, just port the part you need. And then you can put something in the README that's like, these are the parts that have been ported from Drupal 7. And then that way, if somebody else needs it, they can look at that and say, oh, well, either the part I need hasn't been ported, or it has, or I can use it in its current state. But yeah, I mean, if you want to port the whole thing anyway, I would say match the version number so that, if it was 1.2 on Drupal, start a 1.2 on Backdrop that's the same, and then start a 1.3 that's different, or a 3.0 or 2, I don't know, 2.0, I guess.
Yeah, at least field group is simpler than field collections, so there is something to that.
A different tool, completely different tool.
Great. Any other questions? Anything else anyone would like to add? Okay. Well, we're almost pushing up here against an hour anyway, so we shall call it a call if there's nothing else that people would like to add. Thanks everybody for joining as always, and we will see you on the internet. Bye guys.